In Paraburdoo is a play about two people who meet in a regional airport terminal in Paraburdoo, which is a small mining town in the Pilbara region in Western Australia.
Two seemingly very different people who go through a fair bit of kind of conflict through the play, and I guess find out that perhaps they have a lot more in common than either of them would have thought so at the beginning.
Each of them are running away from something, and it's about loneliness, regret, time passing. I think as you get older, that becomes more prevalent to you.
It's about being at a fork and making a decision to change the direction of your life.
I like to think of it as being about the singularity of choice. The characters are sort of agonising over that particular question. Am I happy with the direction that I took? And does it really matter whether I'm happy with it or not? Because ultimately, we can't change our answers. Those options, those choices, those paths are very much singular, or at least it feels as though they are in the moment that we make them.
It's just a really heartfelt story about two people that meet and find comfort in each other without it being a love story.
The two characters, Frank and Stella. We've got Frank, who is this kind of, almost laconic, Australian, reticent, archetypal male character who is very reserved in talking about himself and in talking generally. And Stella, who is this, quite loquacious. She's almost like a leaky tap you just can't turn off. She just can't stop talking. She can't stop sort of interrogating him, and him as a proxy for her. Him as a sort of a stand-in for her own life and her own choices.
It's a really interesting dynamic between two very, very different characters that you wouldn't normally think of putting together. There's a lot of differences between Stella and I, and then there are a lot of similarities between Stella and I. I'm sure a lot of my family would say that I'm quite highly strung, so is she. But she's childless, and so her life experience and some of the things that really matter to her in this play are different to my life experience.
I liked the character, a middle-aged man who has suffered a lot of losses and is trying to work his way through that, trying to find something else to grab onto. Some aspects of it come quite easily. A man of a certain age, playing a man of a certain age, white Australian older bloke, who's had a kind of working background. But some aspects you've really got to work on and find the kind of truth of why he would have particular emotions at particular times. He would try not to show emotion, but there are times when he actually gets quite angry, he's quite hurt about things that have happened, and so that is definitely there. There's an intensity about him at times, yeah.
They're both running away from something, and I think in this moment in time that we meet them and they meet this stranger that they end up confiding in, we hear of their fears and where they're at in their life.
We have these two very different people, and you stick them in a room together and give them no real way out and see what they come up with, and you sort of, you leave it to the characters to see what they can come up with out of that. Invariably humans will have to fill the void with something. It is a play about two people just sitting there in some regard, but it doesn't really matter unless there's a language barrier. It doesn't really matter who they are or how different they are. I think if you stick two people down together with nothing else to do, no reception, no one else to talk to, they're going to start talking eventually. So it's an interesting study of that.
What drew me in was the fact that the two characters were older.
People would probably fairly ask, well, am I the right person to tell that particular story and examine those themes? And the way I see it is that these characters are looking through the rear view mirror and they're sort of interrogating choices that they made in their lives. Should I have turned left? Should I have turned right? And so I think as a younger person, I can look at situations in my own life and ask it in the present tense. Should I turn left? Should I turn right? And so it's interesting to sort of fast forward and go, well, if I were to do this or this, how might I feel about it later on?
There's not that much new work being written for older actors. And so I really liked the fact that Jack, the playwright, who's quite young, but he was writing for my age group, which was like, okay, it was just enlightening. And the story is, I could relate to the story.
A lot of new work is about and for young people, not just in the personnel, but also in the themes. Like a lot of new work is about, finding yourself, an identity, and a lot of it's very good. But there isn't a lot of new work that looks at some of this sort of slightly more reflective stuff. Generally, you have to go to an aging playwright to explore that. And I thought, well, we could maybe flip that on its head. I was interested in examining regret, and I didn't think that I could do that through younger characters as effectively.
It's a really, really good story. I am excited to see the response that people give to the play as far as the writing. I'm just moulding his words. Do you know what I mean? So and the actors have made choices. I'm just, just moulding it.